evening. I'd like to call to order the Lake Forest City Council meeting March 17th. And happy St. Patty's Day, everybody. Thank you for being here. And may the luck of the Irish be yours and ours as a city. So with that, I'd like to open it up with invocation led by Bishop Reed Frisk Feist. Okay, if you please come forward.
Our Father in heaven, we come before Thee at the beginning of this Lake Forest City Council meeting, and we give Thee thanks for the bounteous blessings that Thou hast poured out upon us. We're grateful for the beautiful creations of this earth that we live in, and we're thankful specifically for the recent rains which we have been blessed with in our area. And we ask that Thou would continue to bless us with the moisture that we need in our community and in our state. We're grateful for this wonderful country that we live in, for the freedoms that we enjoy, including a free election that was and is being held today. We are thankful to Thee for those who have fought for the freedoms that we enjoy, who have given their lives, and for those who continue to serve and sacrifice that we may enjoy these freedoms. We're thankful for this state and this city that we live in. We're thankful for the good citizens of Lake Forest who serve the children and the elderly and the less fortunate in our community. And for those who serve in the city, we ask that Thou would bless those who lead us in our nation and in our state, and particularly tonight in our city, that they will have wisdom and have Thy blessings upon them, that their actions might be pure and just. We pray that the proceedings of tonight will be acceptable to Thee, and we're grateful again for all that Thou hast blessed us with. And this prayer and these thanks we leave with Thee in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Thank you. And that leads us to the Pledge of Allegiance, led by Mayor Pro Tem Andrew Hamilton. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Brings us to presentations 1 through 2, and I'm seeking a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. City Manager. Cast your votes.
That motion carried unanimously.
I think we have a new employee that our city manager will introduce.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. Tonight it is my pleasure to introduce Mr. Scott Wasserman. He is the gentleman sitting way over to my left here on the opposite side of the room. And he joined the city here very recently to serve as our new Director of Community Services. Mr. Wasserman was formerly the Director of Parks and Recreation in the City of Commerce, and he managed over an $11 million budget at 35 full-time staff and 215 part-time employees. Yeah, not quite that kind of budget here for you, Scott, just letting you know. But, okay, he has extensive experience in Parks and Recreation, and prior to working at the City of Commerce, he managed neighborhood and park initiatives as a City of Santa Monica Human Services Administrator, and he started his municipal career with the City of Pico Rivera, where he was a Community Services Manager and a Public Safety Manager. Mr. Wasserman holds a Bachelor of Arts in Social Work, Bachelor of Science in Spanish, a master's degree in social work from California State University at Long Beach. And interesting, I found in his background, Scott also served in the Peace Corps in Belize for 2 years. So he's got quite an array of professional, educational, but also just life experience that he's bringing to the city of Lake Forest to serve as our new Director of Community Services. And so, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, members of the community, please join me in welcoming Scott Wasserman.
Thank you. Exactly.
And as a city council, we're excited about having you. You have great big feet to hill because Gary did a wonderful job for us, but I've heard nothing but good things about you. And you come on at the fledgling of our new Orange County gem, our Lake Forest Sports Park, which actually gives us so much more field allocation spaces for our youth athletics. And it's kind of our Disneyland because we don't have a Disneyland. We have the best sports park in all of Orange County. So welcome on board. I know you're going to do a great job. We have a great staff, and so congratulations.
Thank you so much. I'm very excited to be here. Thank you.
You would like any words more?
You know, I'd just like to add, I'm very excited to be here. I think one of the things that attracted me to Lake Forest, I'm coming from a place where there were 4 parks. We had a lot of programming money, and obviously here we're very blessed. We have about 29 parks now, and we're still growing. The work of the council and the community is something that, you know, I'm going to work with the council and the community to move things forward, take what we have and make it even better. And it's just, I think, very exciting, you know, this juncture in my career to be a part of that.
And you can also be thankful that, because your commute here, you be thankful that we are the gateway to South Orange County. So it goes farther down, but we're at the gateway to the south. So,
Exactly.
All righty.
Exactly.
Thank you. Congratulations.
Thank you again.
Okay.
Agenda item 2, a presentation of 2 awards from professional associations for the Lake Forest Sports Park and Recreation Center, submitted by Director of Public Works, City Engineer.
Mr. Mayor, Council, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Wheeler, who has these awards to present to the council.
Thank you, members of the council, mayor, members of the community. We've just received 2 prestigious awards, one from the American Society of Civil Engineers for the Parks and Recreation Project of the Year Award for our sports park, and also we're recognized by the Orange County Engineering Council, both of which I'm members of, and we received the Engineering Project Achievement Award for, again, the Lake Forest Sports Park, and it's a wonderful park. As you mentioned, really the premier park in Southern California. And so these are 2 great awards that always want to be able to celebrate our great successes and present these to the mayor.
So on behalf of the city of Forest, we're very grateful for these awards. And it really, I've stated it again and again and again, that we've got the premier sports park of Orange County. But I would like what our Tom says, that we're the premier sports park of Southern California. So my new terminology will be the premier sports park of Southern California. And it's on behalf of the staff and those that are been involved with our city for so many years that we have these wonderful venues. And so we are blessed, extremely blessed. And so on behalf of the city, I'm very, very grateful for these, and congratulations to you and the staff. Okay.
Thank you.
Best thing about the sports park is that it's used. I go up there several times a week. My granddaughter loves the little play area that they have there, and there's people there all the time. So it's not just award-winning, but it's winning the people. I think that's more important than awards. So if you haven't been there, you definitely need to go.
That brings us to the student liaison.
And, you know, before you come up, I was just going to say I've had the opportunity to even referee a soccer game at this new sports park. So very exciting stuff.
We always like to hear what's going on at El Toro.
And just on the sports park as well, during Winter Formal, people actually took their Winter Formal pictures at the sports park. So, good evening, Mayor and City Council. This is Joseph Hanna, your student liaison, reporting in on Tuesday, March 17th, 2015. Ladies and gentlemen, I am so incredibly proud to announce that our girls water polo team is Division II CIF champions. This is the first time in El Toro history that our girls water polo has become CIF champions. Our girls defeated league rivals San Clemente 5-4. The winning goal came in the last 30 seconds by Maddie D'Amato off a penalty shot. This is truly the definition of a barn burner. Everyone is so proud of their hard work. In celebration of their victory, we had a water rally in the pool. This is different from a normal pep rally because this pep rally is in the pool. Students will compete in a relay in the pool, followed by cannonball contest in the pool, a staff versus CIF champs water polo game in the pool, ending with the unveiling of our first ever girls water polo placard, not in the pool. A lot has happened since the last time we met in regards to boys soccer. 2 Tuesdays ago, Ezekiel Okochoa scored a golden goal in the second overtime to send us into the finals versus Servite. Unfortunately, our boys fell 2-0 to Servite, but we were not done yet. Our boys qualified for CIF state regional playoffs, and unfortunately, in the first round, our season ended there. No need to fret. This was an excellent year in boys soccer, and we look forward to their success in the upcoming years. Dodgeball is in full swing as we finish up the remaining games of the first round, leading up to the big finals in the game in the gym. However, we were just informed that the final team to make it will face Mission Viejo's, Tribuco's, and Laguna's finest dodgeball team in a mega championship. They're the first, and we're all looking forward to this. We have new royalty at El Toro. Big congratulations to Ganindu Abisekra for being our 2015 Mr. Charger, with runner-up Garrett Falke. And just last week, we had our principal for the day. We were honored with our Mrs. Matzel's presence last week as she toured around campus. Plus, she promised she would be back for our huge Clash of the Classes pep rally next week. Speaking of Clash of the Classes, due to sophomore Casey testing this week, Clash of the Classes moved to next week. Clash of the Classes is a class-wide competition involving every day, a dress-up day, snack activity, a class video, all leading up to our humongous pep rally on Friday. Go Seniors! That's all for tonight, and until next time, this is Josephana signing off, and as always, go Chargers!
And, you know, a note on boys soccer. As well as we did this year, the majority of the team is coming back. It's a very young team, and so I see nothing but bright days ahead for El Toro Athletics.
There was only about 5 seniors on the team. The rest are juniors.
That's what I've heard.
Yeah.
So, congratulations, and thank you for your report.
Thank you.
Go Chargers. That brings us to public comments, and I guess I'll start it off. I want to thank those who have participated and voted today, and we have a voting a booth venue right next door. So if anybody hasn't voted, you can go in and vote here in between our agenda items. So thank you for that, and that brings me to the public comments. At this time, members of the public may address the City Council regarding any items within the subject matter of the City Council. No action can be taken on items not listed on the agenda unless authorized by law. Comments shall be limited to 3 minutes per person with an overall time limit of 30 minutes for public portion of comments. Any person wishing to address the City Council on any matter, whether or not it appears on the agenda, is requested to complete a request to speak form available at the door or at the side. The completed form should be submitted up to our City Clerk on this side, and the individual will be heard by the City Council. Have there been any requests from the public?
Andrew O'Connor, followed by Grace Chu.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, City Manager. My name is Andrew O'Connor from Foothill Ranch, California, and I'd like to speak to you tonight on the 9-page memo that I presented earlier to the City Clerk. First, I'd like to say it's a great day to be Irish with my green shirt on, and I know I've stood before you on many occasions passionately talking about this city and this great community. And in reflecting on why I do that is probably because if we look on how this part of California was started, it was started by the Irvines and by the O'Neills. So maybe I have some kind of connection with my genealogy, with my Irish heritage, that I speak so strongly and so passionately about my community. So this evening, I'd like to talk to you about the community satisfaction study, True North Research, that I've downloaded. And I've looked at it thoroughly. And Mr. Mayor, what I'd like to say to you tonight is that in your own documentation, we have a population of 79,139 people in Exhibit A here. However, we only talked to 400 people in this survey. 400 residents were talked to, Mr. Mayor. This doesn't even represent 1%. When the Gallup organization does a survey, they at least get a 5% response. This survey, we didn't get even 1%. How can we justify spending $18,000 on this and getting accurate information? I'm disappointed, and I hope we look at this in the future and stop this survey. It's a win-win situation for the City Council because you can say you did a good job. True North gets $18,000. And of course, they're not going to say anything negative about the city. But don't you remember when I stood in front of you and 3,000 people signed a petition to stop the development further up north of the changing from commercial to residential? We don't remember that 3,000 people signed petitions in a hot summer day to stop what was happening? It's not in this report, is it, gentlemen? I'm disappointed that it's not. Second, the interview only lasted 20 minutes. You can't get the right information from there. Third, in the city manager's leaflet, again, he pats himself on the back on what a great job we're doing, but it doesn't say the percentage of people that answered. Not even, as I already showed you the calculations, it's not here, Mr. Mayor. How can it be a substantial report? Fourth, you continued your misinformation at the Meet the Mayor at the Grove at Baker Ranch last week. I'd like to know the 200 people that participated in that. Were they builders? Were they subcontractors? Were they actual residents, Mr. Mayor, of the zip codes 92610 and 92630? You said there's 200 people there? I'd like to know exactly who they are. Okay? I think that's important because the Orange County Register covered it. Fifth, obviously, you do not read the True Market Research Report, where the top concerns of residents is traffic. And this is Exhibit E of my report tonight.
Yes, sir, did you need more time than...
Yeah, I said 5 minutes. I'm at 3 minutes.
Did you say that when you got to the mic here today?
Well, we talked about it out there. And
I said you got to make the request from the mic.
Okay, I would like to have 5 minutes, Mr. Mayor.
So you want 2 more minutes?
Yes, sir.
All right, and we'll give you 2 more minutes.
Thank you. Okay. The True North Market Research says the biggest issue in our community is transportation. Well, Mr. Mayor, how are we going to have a better transportation route when you're approving 4,300 new homes in 5 master plan neighborhoods? And then you say, new roads are going to be developed. Really, Mr. Mayor, what new roads are going to be developed to take on this traffic? I don't see it. Okay? I wish you would give us more information on that. 6, Councilman Dwight Robinson, election material, proposes a city traffic commission. But he voted against a city traffic commission, didn't you? Right. So, Mr. Mayor, my point is, who can we believe when you espouse this misinformation to the public, to me, and then when I bring it up here in black and white? 7th, did you know, article in the Orange County Register talks about Oakley, Panasonic, and Lone Depot, all employing people. But how many of those are Lake Forest and Foothill Ranch and Portola Hill residents? Doesn't say, does it? And also, do you know that Oakley runs buses from their factory to Santa Ana to bring Santa Ana people to come and work in our community? Okay? In conclusion, for a democracy to be a representation of the people, our elected officials are sworn under oath to do their jobs. What this administration does is time and time again is to cater to the special interest groups called developers at the expense of public safety, education, and my quality of life. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. I gave you 2 minutes because you're Irish, and so I will wish you a happy St. Paddy's Day, and may the luck of the Irish be yours, and so thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Grace Chu, followed by Vincent Burke.
Mr. Mayor and council members and city staff, I just want to introduce myself. My name is Grace Chu, and I represent Congresswoman Mimi Walters. I am a Lake Forest resident as well, so I'm just excited to be here, and I'm looking forward to working with everyone here in front of me, as well as the constituents behind. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Vincent Burke, followed by Heiko Peschel.
Good evening, Vincent Burke, Lake Forest. Discretionary parking permits, Part 2. Per your request, Mr. Mayor, I did ask Lake Forest over the past 2 weeks a question. Question. There are non-gated public access residential streets in the city which are posted as parking by permit. The residents of these select streets are issued parking permits that are to be displayed within the vehicles when parked on the streets at the curb. Does the city have in place a review process for the maintenance of the parking by permit status of these streets? Does the city conduct periodic on-site inspections of these residential areas so as to ensure compliance with Lake Forest Municipal Code Chapter 9.168, off-street parking? Or are the residents left to self-regulate? If inspections of garages occur, what is the frequency? How much advance notice is given? Are unannounced drive-by or walk-by plain view inspections of open garages ever conducted? Is there a process whereby permits may be revoked for individual addresses or streets as a whole should repeated or significant non-compliance with Chapter 9.168 be recorded? In other words, does the City of Lake Forest do so? What does the city do to ensure that these parking permits do not become a license for residents to thus use the garages for purposes other than what they are intended, temporary storage of motor vehicles at a number of which the garage is designed to accommodate? You know, you've all probably seen that chapter. Okay. These streets in questions are public streets. They're not private. The curbs are a public accommodation for parking. The permits and sidewalks, the pavement and sidewalks are maintained at public expense. These streets are swept at public expense. Parking is monitored by sworn and civilian sheriff's personnel at public expense, and permits are issued at public expense. Yet there is no mechanism, no obligation to ensure that the public interest is protected. No quid pro quo, which requires that those who benefit from this discriminatory practice are held directly accountable to the public, such as under Lake Forest Municipal Code, Chapter 9.168. I have a message here from code enforcement which said that any use of the garage that precludes the ability to reasonably use it for parking constitutes a violation, whether it be framed walls or an accumulation of old TV sets. I'll get to this quickly. I don't object to this policy per se. However, I do object to the fact that it's not being, that it should not be used as a license for residents to use their garages for purposes other than for parking. I've seen it myself. If anyone has driven these streets to see this, they would see it as well. There's an individual who uses, and I see the red light flashing, there's an individual who, on one of these parking by permit streets, who owns a stretch limousine. He doesn't park it on his streets. He's out there on the other streets where the rest of the residents for non-permitted parking have to park. No quid pro quo, no reciprocity here. So please review this, look at it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Mr. Mayor, can I ask Vince to please send me a copy of that, of all those issues?
Certainly.
Okay, thank you.
Heiko Peschel.
Hello again. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Council people. Heiko Peschel, Foothill Ranch. I had the honor of having as a guest at our Foothill Ranch Homeowners Association meeting the Honorable Dr. Jim Gardner. He listened carefully to what we had to say about things like Melrose and a few other complaints. And after that, I went and called Lisa Bartlett's office, spoke with a couple of her aides, had one of them get back to me, Mr. Cow, I believe. And he said that he was planning on getting together with the city on working on something to solve our problem. I don't know whether any of you have heard from him yet or from her office, but when you do, I would really hope that you work with them to get something done. That's the primary. Secondary, street sweeping, trash hauling. Both street sweepers and trash haulers show up at my door before 7:30 every time. Is there any way to switch that they do the industrial commercial early and the residential later when there are no cars out there and there's nothing to get in their way? Thanks, guys.
Thank you so much.
There have been no further requests.
With that, that brings us to the warrant registry. All matters listed on the warrant registry are considered routine and will be enacted by one vote. There will be no separate action, discussion on these items unless a member of the City Council, the public, or staff requests specific items to be removed from the warrant registry for separate actions. Have there been any requests to remove from the warrant registry?
No, Your Honor.
Council?
Move the warrant register.
Second.
Colleagues, please cast your votes.
That motion carried unanimously.
Thank you. That brings us to item number 4 through 10, miscellaneous consent calendar. All matters listed on the consent calendar are considered routine and will be acted with one vote. There will be no separate discussion on these items unless members of the City Council, the public, or staff request specific items to be removed from the consent calendar for separate action. Have there been any requests?
Number 9.
Colleagues? I'll take
5 and 9.
what was that? 5?
5 and 9.
5 and 9. Okay. I'll take for the remainder.
Move the balance.
Second.
Okay. Cast your votes, please.
That motion carried unanimously. Agenda item 5, minutes of the regular meeting of the City Council held on February 17, 2015, submitted by City Clerk and removed from the consent calendar by Councilmember Gardner.
Okay, thank you. As usual, you do, the City Clerk does an excellent job with the minutes. In this case, because it was so full of information, you left out something that probably wasn't important to you, but important to me, and that was the point at which, following the discussions near the end of the session, I requested that they come back, the applicant, Mobile Gas Station, with a complete list of wines and beers and the personnel budget, and if they were okay, I was prepared to move forward. And I think that's important to add. From my point of view.
I think that the vote was taken and we were denied at that position.
Oh, no, yeah, and everything else was correct. I just wanted to, I thought under the conditions which were potentially contentious, that was an important thing to say. And she could phrase it, go back and review it. And
So you're just requesting that your comments regarding regarding the personnel budget and a list of wines, that in your opinion, if you were to bring that back and they were okay, you would be supportive of the project. You just want to reflect that position.
Yes.
In the item. It won't change the outcome of the vote. Members of the council, he's just asking that
The vote was taken, yeah.
Correct. It won't change any of that. He's just asking that his position be more fully reflected. That's his request.
And the tape reflects that. Okay.
Yes, he did. Those comments were made, yes.
Are you prepared to move that item then?
yeah, I'll,
Second that?
with that change, I'll
Okay,
move.
I'll second that. So all in favor, please cast your votes for item number 5. Brings us to item number 9.
Agenda item 9, draft fiscal year 2015-2020 CBDG 5-year consolidated plan and fiscal year 2015-16 draft expenditure plan submitted by Assistant City Manager and removed from the consent calendar by a member of the public and Councilmember Gardner. Pat Hughes?
All right. Good evening, everyone. I'm here on behalf of South County Outreach. Just wanted to extend our gratitude for the ongoing support and for recommending us for support for the 15-16 year. Just give you a little feel of our services with respect to Lake Forest residents. Last year we had over 4,000 residents. Over 4,000 households receive over 13,000 services, and those services included a week's worth of groceries, fresh produce, including fresh produce, lean meats, lean dairies. It also includes completing free computer learning classes to increase workforce development. So that's in Microsoft Office programs. That's in QuickBooks is a new one we've added. In addition, it includes receiving rental and utility assistance for residents that were facing 3-day or quit eviction notices or that were facing utility shutoff. So Lake Forest represents by far our largest served city. It's more than double the next city that we serve, and we serve all cities in Orange County. So just appreciate you guys keeping the support, and thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for getting what we do to our community.
All right.
Okay. That brings us to, that was the public.
Yes.
Okay, brings us back to Councilman Jim Gardner, who pulled this.
Okay, yeah, I have a whole bunch of items to go through. Let's start off with, and these are all going to be, who wrote this document? Who's the author?
The city retained a consultant, PMC. They're with us this evening to assist in answering any questions that council may have.
Okay, so
Bearing in mind, of course, Mayor and Council, it is a draft.
Yes, okay, so these are all changes I'd like to see in the document, or things I don't think are being explained very well. This is an important document because, one, it sets out our goal and our mission in this area, and secondly, it's a document that we give to the federal government certifying that this is our approach and these are our numbers, et cetera. So I'm a little more concerned that all the dots are in the right places, et cetera, et cetera. So let me start. 15% of the $381,000 blah 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 dollars is going. Most of this is about the public agencies, going to the public agencies, which is $57,000. But I noticed that an additional $87,000 was being carried over, and I'm wondering why can 15% of that also go to the public agencies, or does that have to go into the other categories?
Mayor, members of the council, I'm going to be calling on Mike Linares.
Or he could come up here.
But I happen to know the answer to that question, and it's no. We can only allocate 15% of the 15-16 grant to public services, so the $87,000 that's being reprogrammed cannot go towards public services.
Okay. And I noticed also only 12 agencies applied for funds, and I'm wondering there why so few. That doesn't seem, given that the city and the feds are giving out money, why didn't we have more? Are we not doing enough to attract more applicants?
Of course, numbers are always relative. We think that's actually a lot, given our past performance, to have 12 agencies apply for a grant of only $381,000 in a city of our size. That's actually a very good response and very consistent with past response.
Okay. At one point in the document it says, Mike Linares, the city's CDBG consultant. Now, is that the same as PMC that we talk about later, or?
Thank you. Good clarification. Mike Linares is under contract with the city under a 3-year term to provide technical assistance with managing the technical aspects of our ongoing grant, which, as we've mentioned before, this CDBG grant comes with enormous strings and considerable technical reporting requirements. Mr. Linares specializes in those services. He consults with a number of cities in Orange County, including Lake Forest now. So he's our general redevelopment consultant. He is not the author of our con plan. In this case, PMC was retained under a separate contract for those specific services.
Okay, I didn't, not that it has to be necessarily in the report, but I didn't get that from the report. Can I be so gross as to ask how much he gets paid?
Mike Linares?
Yeah.
$4 million a year. No.
I want that to
Mike Linares, just might help to answer the question this way, he was retained through a competitive RFP process in which we had 3 or 4 firms that I think applied, and we selected him through that competitive process. I think his annual contract is about $22,000 a year.
Okay, and what did PMC get for preparing the plan?
This plan, I think, was also in the range of $22,000.
Okay. And I'm not being critical, quite frankly, it's pretty good. And I was impressed with all the information and the layout, et cetera. So I'm just clarifying. And I apologize. I used to be a university professor, so you're suffering the slings and arrows that my students suffered. I apologize for that. At some point, you make a good point about avoiding duplication, using Camino instead of Laguna, using fair housing instead of the other one. On the other hand, I noticed that we're duplicating the food, and that's nothing against South County Outreach. I worked for them for many years, giving them food, or Families Forward that I give stuff to. So it's not an indication of anything about those particular groups, but it just seems like that's a duplication, and maybe there's a reason for that, but it's not clear from the report what that reason is.
Certainly, Mayor, members of the council. I'm confident there'll be a question soon here I can't answer. But in this particular instance, the duplication of service was one factor we looked at. But we mentioned in the report, and we actually included in attachment 3, that this year we wanted to pay a little more attention to past performance. And Laguna Beach Community Clinic has struggled a little bit in that area, but that was just one factor. Laguna Beach Clinic, another reason we didn't recommend them, in addition to past performance and duplication of services, they're geographically so far from the city of Lake Forest.
No, I wasn't questioning the ones you ruled out. I was wondering, given that you were ruling out people for duplication,
Yes.
How did we get duplicates then?
I'm getting to that answer slowly, bear with me. So in this case, although there is some duplication of service between South County Outreach and Families Forward, both are located in immediate proximity to Lake Forest and are doing a very good job of serving Lake Forest residents. And while there is some overlap of service, there's less overlap between those two agencies than there is between the two healthcare agencies. They do some similar things and some dissimilar things. And so we felt like funding those was still a priority and, in staff's view, worthy of recommendation.
Okay, and I have no problems with that, and the report just might have a sentence or two that explain that, because it seemed funny to be talking about duplication and then
Certainly.
doing that. On the other hand, since you bring it up, and the claim that the organizations with demonstrated high performance rates are being recommended for higher funding amounts, that's one of the claims on page 8. But in fact, if you do the analysis, you can see what a pain in the ass I was to my students. The correlation between 3-year performance and funding is only 0.6, which is reasonably low. So I think that sentence, because it isn't supported by the data, needs to be softened, that you did take it into account. But it's certainly at a 0.6, it's just being taken into account. It's not driving decision-making.
Right. It's one of several factors.
The other things I think need clarified are for Family Forward and South County Outreach. Throughout the report, you describe them as individuals. I don't believe those are individuals. I believe that there you're giving it to families. I know for sure, because I was at South County Outreach. A person comes in there, but the person's coming in as part of a family. So you're not giving them the groceries for an individual, it's the groceries for a family, which in Lake Forest times 3. So I think the rest of the commentary is accurate, but I think in those cases we should talk about families and not individuals. It's even more powerful considering that that's families and how many people we're serving. Okay. Another question I had, there's a lot of interesting things. I'm sure you guys had the same kinds of questions as I did, like how many, we've got places that don't have working kitchens and places that are overcrowded. Nowhere in there is there any indication of how we got that data. So I'm just wondering, how do we know that the kitchens aren't working in 20% of the people of those homes?
Al or Mike, do you know, is that part of the CHAZ data? It's part of the, we mentioned in the report that that's part of this mandatory data source we have to use, the comprehensive affordable housing strategy, the CHAZ.
Yeah, the CHAZ and the ACS.
Correct.
Right.
In certain cases, we have our own field data where occasionally code enforcement is called out or building services are called out to units on a complaint basis where there's particular issues, substandard conditions, but that's a CHAZ-driven number, quite frankly. And unless we have better data, which we don't, other than those rare instances where we're called out, we're required to use it.
Okay, so when you say a CHAS-driven data, that means that's not actually the data, that's a projection.
Well,
Are there really that many
they're estimates.
estimates based on somewhere somebody did a study that said
Correct.
3%? Based on our population, we're saying 3%.
Correct.
That's actually, so those are, okay, that's what I wanted to know. On page 3, on the big, long report, it says that on the second paragraph there, talking about the claims in the last 4 years for 2010 to 2014, it says we assisted 12,965 people. Well, that's nearly half the population. And I don't know how that could be true. It seems to me that what's happening there is somebody's accumulating over the years, so the 1,800 people from South County this year and next year, but it makes it sound like we actually served in this program in the last 4 years half the population of Lake Forest.
Well, no. Well, unless I'm misunderstanding, that may be 12,000 people over a 5-year period. So those numbers are pulled right out of our CAPER, which is our Consolidated Annual Performance Report. So we do 2 reports on an annual basis to use CDBG funds. One is the action plan. You're seeing that tonight. The other, that's a look forward. What are we going to do in the coming year? The CAPER is what we've done that year. We added up the numbers that those 2 organizations served over the 5-year period, and it is 12,000, which I'm not sure understanding. That's 12,000 people.
Well, that would be half the people in this room. So raise your hand if you got serviced by these people. It's probably none of us.
Over a 4-year period.
Over that 4-year period.
Yeah, with an organization, I think, for example, South County Outreach serves 1,000 people a year.
I know. The chances are they're serving the same 700 every year after year, and then there's another 300. But you're telling me that half the population in Lake Forest in the last 4 years has been served by these organizations.
Mike, are those unduplicated or?
Mayor, Council, Mike Linares. Good evening. Councilmember, you are correct. Those are duplicate numbers. HUD does allow an organization to recount program participants each fiscal year. So, for example, if it is somebody that's coming to one of the community clinics, the community clinic can report them as being served in 2014-15, and then if they come back in 15-16, they're allowed to count them again. So that is an overall grouping of a number that we are reporting to HUD.
Yeah, and I think it's deceptive, and given that this is going to
I understand.
There's a better way to
point.
phrase it, is what I'm trying to say.
Okay, and we can work on that language. Yes, no problem.
On page 37, it talks about the data for homelessness, and again, because we didn't have data, we just did a projection. But in fact, and these guys may not know it, we do have some data on homelessness, which we just got about a month or so ago. So I think we should insert the data we actually have on homelessness rather than the estimate they have.
Yes, Mayor and members of the council, we actually note that in that footnote in the staff report. This homelessness information is regional off the 2013 point in time. We have some better data now through our police services department, through the homeless liaison officer. We don't have the 2014 point in time survey data yet, but we think we can improve that data. That's why we made that note in the report.
Yeah, good.
And we will between now and the final draft.
Okay, on page 46, you say the construction of the sports park is underway, and as you know by now, it's long finished, so that probably needs to be updated. On page 49, you talk about the 2012 survey results, but now we're in 2014. We have survey results, so that can probably be updated. On page 65, you talk about the needs of the special needs population, but then there's a whole blank thing there. It really just seems to drop in the middle of it, so that just needs to be flushed out. Page 70, the table there, and again, this is all great information, so these are all, I don't want to say minor points since it's going to the federal government, but these are all things that would make it better. There's a very good table on page 70 talking about the major employers. It'd be nice to have a total at the bottom of that table instead of doing that. The last paragraph on page 70 says, I'll be finished pretty soon. Again, I apologize for my obsessiveness in trying to produce an accurate report. a more accurate report. The last paragraph says the relatively high educational attainment levels, blah, blah, blah. In fact, that's not true, unfortunately. We have a relatively low attainment record compared to South County, the other cities here. Our 44% BA and more and 13% with a graduate degree, as impressive as that may be, is actually relatively below most of our neighbors. So you might want to strike that sentence.
Mayor, members of the council, I think that's county-wide data. We can probably.
Oh, yes, that's county-wide data.
We can create a subset there.
Okay. On page 77, you list the priorities, but you don't list them in order. In fact, you start with a low one. I think it's probably better to start with a high one. And finally, on page 93, and this is the last of my comments, there's a whole bunch of stuff about affordable housing, none of which do we do. And so it looks as if the report is saying this is what we're doing, and it's not what we're doing. If the report was saying this is what we should be doing, then that would be great. So I think that one needs to be either don't say we're doing that because we're not doing that, like bonuses and things like that.
Mayor, members of the council, just to clarify that point, maybe we can go through those real quick. We actually are doing these. We do monitor new housing developments for compliance with development agreements that include affordable housing.
It wasn't that one.
Collaborate with affordable housing developers to identify potential sites. We do that on a regular basis. In fact, we're getting ready. Right, an example would be the RFP we'll hope to issue soon to find new partners to expand our affordable housing. The last one is actually a goal, I believe, that's in our current housing element. It is true, we have not heretofore provided density bonuses or parking reductions, but under certain provisions in state law, we would be obligated to do that if an affordable housing developer came in. So it doesn't mean we have to do it, but it means it's something we could do if the circumstances warrant. And that's really all that bullet point is saying. So I think to strike that, one, potentially would make this document inconsistent with our housing element, which we wouldn't recommend to the council. And in staff's view, if we haven't done them, we potentially could do them in the coming 5 years.
Yeah, okay. It wasn't clear to me as a naive reader. It looked like we were doing all those things.
We can make that clear.
So I think it just with that clarification, it'd be great. Other than that, I'm sorry for my obsessiveness in taking your time. I thought it was a really good document. I think with a couple of changes like this, it'll be that much of a better document. So thank you very much. And with that, I'm happy to move it.
And I'll second that and call for the vote. Thank you.
What exactly is the motion here?
Mayor, members of the council, maybe I can clarify. If staff's recommendation is twofold, give us some review and comment on both the 15-16 expenditure plan and the draft consolidated plan. You've done that. Or you may have other comments. Feel free to provide those. The second recommendation is to authorize us to begin the 30-day notice period now. We mentioned this as a draft. What happens now is we run that 30-day notice period, and we invite everyone from the public then to also comment on our draft. Comes back to you on May the 5th. So I think the motion is to let those two actions occur.
And then it's coming back to us after the...
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'm not suggesting that they put my revisions in now and then send it out. That would just waste time because there may be more stuff. So it could go out now, and then when they get other revisions, then they can take into account mine.
Okay. I don't want to debate the individual issues here, so if we're just moving forward with the staff recommendation here, appreciate that.
That motion carried unanimously.
Okay, this brings us to the public hearing. Madam Clerk.
Agenda item 11, public hearing to consider street names for the Portola Center residential project, submitted by Director of Development Services.
So this will open to the public hearing portion of the Lake Forest City Council meeting. And City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. To provide the staff report this evening, I'll defer to Ms. Ackerman.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and City Council members. The Municipal Code requires that the City Council hold a public hearing to adopt names for new streets. Baldwin & Sons, the landowner and developer of the Portola Center development, is requesting street names for the new development located on their property. It's generally northwest, northeast, and south of Glen Ranch Road and Saddleback Ranch Road. The names of the potential street names are attached. As you can see, there's quite a few. They'll actually be selecting from this list for the actual names, the street names in the development in the future. The applicant is also here this evening if you have any questions relative to the names or the project. Thank you.
Council? Is there anybody from the public? Seeing none.
Okay. I'll move the item.
Oh, no,
That's fine. I just have a really general and quick question. When we're talking to developers about street names, do we give them any information about how those are created and impacts they might have on public safety in any way, just with repetitive names and things like that? I meant to ask you this earlier, and I apologize.
We have, we will review the list of names for things like that. We check against all the street names we already have, and if they're confusing or directional. So we go through the names. They usually pick a theme and then go with that.
Typically, the first few times this has come across that I've had to vote on it over the last couple of years, I've kind of haven't paid a whole lot of attention to that. But as I've had a chance to interact with some public safety professionals, then they just tell me things like when we have the same beginning street name with circle, place, road, street, and so on and so forth, and then there's a public safety call that sometimes that's a challenge. So I know most of the time the developers are trying to come up with something that's cute and whimsical or will attract people to a neighborhood or, whatever it might be. And, so I just, as long as we're kind of making sure that they're aware of that public safety need, because that's a concern of mine, I guess, that I wasn't aware of a couple of years ago, but we want to make sure that the response time can be as quick as possible when someone's out there on a cell phone at, the corner of whatever two streets and they can't explain whether it's a circle or a place or whatever. So just want to make sure that we make that comment to them when we get a chance. But other than that, I'll second the motion.
Okay, so I can close the public comments. Okay, it says close the public comments of this portion of the hearing and bring it back to City Council, and then I'm going to request a motion. Okay, second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
That motion carried unanimously.
Thank you. Actually, the street names are kind of cool, so I actually like them. Y'all should look into that. That moves us to discussion and action items, items 12 through 15.
Agenda item 12, mid-year budget review, submitted by City Treasurer, Director of Finance.
Mr. Members of the Council, I'm going to defer to our Director of Finance and City Treasurer to provide his mid-year budget review. So, Mr. Neves, up to you.
Thank you, Mr. Deming. Mayor, City Council members, tonight we'll walk through the mid-year budget review. Each year we try to collect data through 6 or 7 months of the year and then bring it back to you to let you know where we're at and where we stand at the budget and if we're needing any changes. So I'll walk you through a about 12-slide PowerPoint presentation on where we're currently at on the budget. We'll walk through both the city operating budget, revenues and expenditures, and we'll also walk through any changes in the 2013-2015 capital improvement projects budget. A couple topics of discussion. We'll give an economic overview, what's going on in the city. We'll walk through the general fund revenues, walk through the general fund expenditures and any changes in those. And then we'll go to the other funds, our special revenue funds and our capital funds. We'll walk through all the revenue and expenditure changes in all those funds. Economic overview. We have a balanced general fund budget. From the beginning budget that was adopted last June, we had about a $900,000 surplus. We've increased that to about $1 million surplus before transfers. The general fund revenues are up by about $223,000. General fund expenditures are actually going down by about $193,000. And then reserves are fully funded. We'll add a little bit to the reserves because the reserve policy states that 40% of reserves come from revenues. So as revenues go up, our reserves go up. The city is in solid financial condition in all funds. Give a little detail on the general fund revenue. Taxes are up approximately $663,000. That consists of property taxes of $288,000. That's just normal taxes increasing. A little bit of that is the residual from the redevelopment project area. We're getting a little more from that project area than what we anticipated at the beginning of the year. And then just regular taxes coming in a little bit higher than what they were coming in when we projected this back in May of 2014. Sales tax is up just a click. That's going to take us, it's up about $50,000. That'll take us to roughly about $13,600,000 for total sales tax in the city. And TOT, which is transient occupancy tax, we're moving that up from $2,950,000 to $3,250,000, a $300,000 increase. So our local hotels are doing very well out there. Franchise fees. Franchise fees consist of cable, gas, electric, and trash. 3 out of the 4 are going up for a total of $113,000. User fees, these are going down. These user fees would be building permits, plan check fees by about $600,000. Some of the development going on out there, when we first looked at the numbers last May or April, May of June of 2014, and the numbers we received from the developers, what they would pull this year, are a little less than what they are pulling. So, of course, those numbers are going to go down. Ultimately, those numbers will be pulled. We'll probably put them back into the 15-16 budget, and they'll have them all pulled by the end of June 2016. Some other just little revenue sources, miscellaneous revenue and so forth and so on, is up $57,000.
Do you have any explanation, like why is our sales tax doing relatively poor compared to all those other? Everything's doing well, but
yeah, I don't know if our sales tax is doing relatively poor. We're going up roughly what I see other cities are going up. I just got another quarterly report from the Board of Equalization today. And actually, our sister city, Mission Viejo, was flat, and we're up almost 5%. So I think we're about the same as our surrounding cities. They differ every quarter. Everybody has a good quarter. Some people have a flat quarter. But overall, we're going up 3.5%.
And on the property taxes, almost none of Baker Ranch would have shown up in there.
No, Baker Ranch probably won't show up. Some of it will start showing up in the 15-16 year because it goes into the supplemental roll first. It gets distributed countywide, and then it finally gets into the Lake Forest roll.
And just as a comment to everyone in the audience, if you decide to shop or dine in Lake Forest, or even buy a car, we have a Subaru dealer and a Mercedes-Benz dealer. So please shop, dine, and all of those things here in Lake Forest. It helps our local sales tax revenue, as Director Keith Neves is talking here.
The mayor likes to say, shop and dine, stay and play.
There we go. Okay, on the general fund expenditure side, overall expenditures are down $193,100. As you see, personnel is up $37,800. That was approved by the City Council back in August for certain increases. Operations and maintenance is down $270,000. The biggest portion of that is in development services. That's the building and safety services contract. So if the revenue's going down, the contracts are also going down because we're not using them as much to provide those services. New capital equipment and furniture for the sports park. I think this will be the last you will ever see of any more adjustments to the sports park of equipment going in there. I think we've got it fully set now with all the equipment we need, so we just needed one last adjustment for the sports park. So overall, the general fund budget. The restated beginning balances, as you see, beginning balances in the general fund, $23.3 million. Revenues are $39.2 million. Expenditures $38.1 million. That gives you your $1 million surplus. Transfers out $200,000. That is the transfers going to the reserve fund since revenue is going up. And your ending balance in the general fund is $24.2 million. Here's just shows you where your reserves are at. Reserve fund balance started out with 19.4. We're increasing it by $200,000, going up to 19.6. That is because revenue is increasing, and our reserve policy, as I said before, is based off revenue. So as revenue increases, your fund balance in your reserve funds increase. Some of the other fund revenues, these funds are your special revenue funds. For instance, gas tax, AQMD, Measure M, asset forfeiture funds, those types of special revenue funds. And also these are all your capital funds that we have set up for the impact fees for the development that's going on in the city. Now, this is a big number. Other revenue funds are down $15.6 million. We'll walk through them and give you the explanation on that. The first two are city facilities fee. Well, the first one is the city facilities fee, maintenance fee. That is the park development fee that each developer owes us. These are just going down because the permit number that we were projecting at the beginning of the year is not where it's at. So we are just reducing these to what we think the ending permit number being pulled for homes is at. So that's just down by $151,000. The next two don't deal with the development. Those are city capital projects. One is we're adding these two projects to the CIP, and they're both 100% funded by the grant. So we're going to need to put revenues on one side and expenditures on the other side, ask for the appropriation so we can spend the money. The MWD grant, it was a $54,000 grant with matching $100,000. What the city has come up with is we're taking the grant for $54,000. We've also found other matching for the rest of the $100,000. So this is no cost to the city. So this whole 154, it has absolutely no cost to the city.
And your acronym MWD, is that
Metropolitan Water
District
I'm
in
sorry.
Southern California? Okay.
Yes. The other city capital project is an OCTA grant for $5,000. That's for the screens on storm drains, 100% funded by OCTA. There will be some ongoing costs, and we'll put that in future budgets for the cleaning of them because they need to be cleaned once a year, or maybe more than that, once a year. So there'll be some ongoing costs, very little costs ongoing to clean these things as they go. But the screens themselves are all paid for by OCTA. Okay, well, we'll move on to the facilities capital projects. This $2.2 million is just developers, community financing fees, the impact fee. This is revenue that will eventually come in as the homes are pulled. We will rebudget this in the 15-16 budget. All these permits should be pulled by the end of June 2016. So we'll just rebudget this next year. We'll adjust the budget so our revenues look appropriate to this year. Same with the Park Development Construction Fund. That money will eventually come in. Permits just aren't as high as what was originally projected back in May and June of 2014. Also with the OSA capital projects, the $11 million, that's the biggest number of them all. That was the repayment for the Radios property. We thought we'd be having final track maps and first permits being issued, but it looks like this is going to happen just after June 30th, 2015, so we need to adjust that and then put it back in the 15-16 budget. And then affordable housing, not just affordable housing money coming in from the developer agreements that whoever is not putting affordable housing on their property owe us an affordable housing fee, and that's just being reduced down. Eventually, they will come in. All these revenues that are reducing down go to capital accounts. It's all one-time revenue from building permit activity. So when it does come in, it will be in various CIP accounts that we can use for various projects. But I got to remind everybody that it is one-time revenue, and building projects have ongoing maintenance expenditures against it. So we got to be careful how we budget this money.
Before we go to expenditures, there's a $7.5 billion water bond. Do we have any plans to tap into that money as a source of revenue?
I have not seen anything come our way yet. The Public Works Director might make a comment on that. Usually those types of funds come his way first, and then he'll bring them up to the Finance Department, and we'll take a look at them.
Thank you. We have no specific plans. We've got a list of projects that we look at regionally. Councilmember Hamilton's on that committee, went to his first meeting last week to look at those bonds and how we best regionalize and try to get those fundings.
And just one more comment. As you're going through this, I think I might not be speaking for all of us, but I'd like to be focused on the expenditures. I know the revenue changes. Those are the kind of things that, we don't have like a lot of services we charge, and so I don't think we have a lot of control over necessarily the revenue like you've discussed. But however, we do have control over the expenses or expenditures. And so as you go through, I think you already started talking about this earlier too, but the MWD grant, as you're going down this list, can you just go down if there's a corresponding revenue source, or if they're items that are just kind of more discretionary?
Yes.
Is you could just go down this list of expenditures for us.
Okay. Other fund expenditures, remind you that this is outside the general fund, so these are special revenue funds and or capital funds that we have brought in one-time money for at some point in time. So the other funds expenditures are going up $991,900. Of course, you saw this on the revenue side, the MWD grant, new project, $154,600. That revenue is coming in from the grant from MWD and some rebates from, I think it was from MWD too. The OCTA Screens grant, of course, has an off-side revenue, $105,000. It's coming from Orange County Transportation Authority. The bridge project, that's just will be spent from gas tax, special revenue fund for the bridge project. This was a project that the County of Orange maintenance crew started for us last year. Did a little bit, maybe 10% got done in last June, and it followed into this year, so we needed to finish up the project. The Portola Park design, that is fully funded by the developer. They did write us a check for $315,800. That is the initial design going on at Portola Park, and this just isn't for the initial design. This will cover some of the final design too. And that park is also paid for entirely by the developer. Whispering Hills design, the $41,200. These are all council items that were approved back in November to go forward with the designs on these. That is coming from the Park Development Construction Fund. That is impact fees in all the developer agreements. If you're not putting parks on site, you owe us a park development impact fee. This is where these fees are coming from. Same with the Village Pond Park final design, the $210,700. That's coming from the Park Development Construction Fund. Those are all impact fees coming from development that's going on around the city. Of course, if you're not putting parks on your development, you owe us a fee. Barker Ranch Park, it's coming from the Park Development Construction Fund, $5,000. Various legal expenses helping us get to the final stage on that dog park. And then, of course, we have two CDBG Phase 7 and CDBG Phase 8 grants. HUD, we're just adjusting our level of funding. Sometimes when we budget, we don't know the full funding yet. And then we're just adjusting those fundings for those projects right now. So that's all we're doing on those. On the next funds, all funds budget, recap, revised. Beginning balances, $66.8 million. Revenues are $59.4 million. Expenses, operating $42.3 and capital $16.3. Ends with a $58.6 in expenditures. We're moving total funds up by roughly $800,000 to an ending balance of $67.6 million. The all funds budget does include the general fund budget and all funds of the city. With that said, like I said, the city's in good financial health, fully funded reserves, surpluses on our budgets. So if any other comments from the city council, or I can push it back over to the city manager, we can answer those now.
Council?
I think going on what Councilman Hamilton said, and looking forward to the 5-year strategic planning, I think personally what I'm interested in, it's hard for me to keep track of, this is coming in, this is coming out, this is 1 year, this is, et cetera, et cetera. What I want to be able to look at when we do the strategic planning is, given what we're committed to, like what are our normal sources of revenue and their fluctuations and our expenditures, can we afford to, staff the sports park that we just built? We built that on one-time monies, but that's going to last for 30 years and it's got to be supported. Then we're going to have other things we're going to talk about, like whatever happens to Whispering Hills, whatever. So for each of these, taking out those one-times because they kind of distort it, I'd like to be able to know how we look going out 10 years or 15 years on just what's coming in and what we're expending, and can we afford what's a dog park going to cost us every year? So can we build one? I know we can build one because we have the money today, but can we pay for cleaning it up and et cetera, et cetera? So it's nothing now, but
during the 5-year plan, we'll give you a projection of 5 years out on all the capital funds that you would be using money to either build new parks or build new facilities. So we'll give you a 5-year plan out.
But even the building doesn't worry me as much as the funding them. Because you build a park, you've got to then do the maintenance, what does that cost? So for all these things, I'd like to know what we're going to spend, not just to build it, but to keep it functioning.
Okay.
Councilman Robinson?
So just speaking to that, we do have a sports park maintenance fee fund, right? Where are those dollars in these various funds?
Those dollars are just, we have not spent those dollars.
Yeah.
We are just collecting them, and it is just right now we're just putting them in a fund and probably bring you back a plan on how to spend those in the future.
Sure. And is that specifically designated for the sports park itself or the Civic Center down the road? Could it also be spent on both, or how's that?
It's for OSA-related facilities based on the development agreement, so it could be used for any of the facilities that the city might build. There's a greater history to that issue in terms of the amount. Was never intended to fully fund the cost of maintenance for the facilities being built by the OSA. There will be general fund implications for that. It was all part of the original projection in terms of the fiscal model that dealt with the OSA in terms of additional new property tax or sales tax that might come. So all that's been forecasted. But I think it's a great question. And it certainly was a conversation that Mr. Neves and I had earlier today. And when you have your 5-year plan conversation, you want to project out what we believe revenues and expenditures would be. And when you think about new capital projects, think about the cost to maintain it. And we need to factor that in each and every time. And that doesn't go on the capital side. It goes on your operational side of the books, right? So, you don't take capital money and then try to pay maintenance forever with that because it will run out. So that's all part of what staff will provide in terms of direction, in terms of what we believe the money is. However, and ultimately, when you have that conversation, the council identifies the things that you're interested in. You wouldn't be making the decision right then. We'll come back later with additional information that will tell you what we believe the costs might be for both capital expense as well as maintenance.
It was duly noted that our property tax is up $288,000, our sales tax up $50,000. The thing that I want everybody to notice that our TOT, which includes our hotel stay. So our staying in Lake Forest is up $300,000. And so, I think that, what we've brought into Lake Forest is partly the vision of some of our prior councils, but we've come forth and we've opened up the nicest sports park in all of Southern California. And so I think that in the years to come, with the requests that I'm seeing out there, as someone that's on the soccer fields every weekend and with adult softball playing currently at our sports park, I think tournament play brings weekend stay. And in the past, our hotels have all done well during the week, Monday through Friday. Monday through Thursday, really. But the fact what our sports park puts us on the map with is it's that Friday, Saturday, and Sunday night stays. And so I'm excited to see that $300,000 jump up. And so and that's very good for a start. So congratulations to us as Lake Forest. Gateway to South Orange County.
So, sounds like everything's going very well. Would your advice as our city treasurer be to stay the course?
Yeah, stay the course. We need to really look at capital projects, what we're trying to build into the future, and see the maintenance costs. That's what I foresee the biggest obstacle of turning our budget upside down, is building too many things and not being able to afford the maintenance on an ongoing basis. But otherwise, your revenue's going up. We're holding expenditures, pretty steady here in the city. So if we can just, go forward as we're going forward, we should be okay and have balanced budgets into the future. There are some unknowns out there for next year, but we'll go through those during the budget process, and there'll be some one-time money that will need to be spent next year. The 800 megahertz change out for the county, some insurance requirements and so forth and so on, but we'll go through and we'll work through those during the budget process and bring those forth to you.
Speaking of the sales tax, because I know we've got a consultant that helps us with that, are they giving us any indication on what we should be seeing over the next couple of quarters? Because like with gas prices dropping, there's more consumer spending that's starting to pick up, and the economy's it's growing, maybe slower than all of us would like, but at least it's growing. So I'm just wondering if they have some indication.
Yes, they do. We meet with them on a quarterly. Myself, the city manager, and the assistant city manager. They come down here and give us a full-blown report that shows every business in Lake Forest. Now, I can't talk about individual businesses. Per the resolution from the Board of Equalization, only us three can look at the reports. So, yes, we do go through everything. We see what's going up or down. Gas is going down, but it's going to come steadily back up. So, yes, we did probably take a hit on a little gas in the next couple quarters on this, but it will eventually go back up. And we're seeing actually really good increases in our restaurants and stores. So, yes, people are shopping, dining Lake Forest a lot more.
Did they have any comments about, internet sales and continued growth?
No, we've sat with them once, I think a year and a half ago when you asked that question, we brought them in. Not too much more concern about the internet sales. I mean, they're looking into it all the time, seeing, we're trying to get them to give us some projections. I'm always asking them if they could see how much am I losing out of Lake Forest on internet sales, and it's very tough to actually analyze and get those projections. So they're always trying to come up with ideas on how to get those numbers and how to show cities what they're losing or what they're not losing or what they're gaining.
Sure. Okay. Thanks. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
As far as the gas tax, I'm doing my part, right?
Okay. I'm doing you should know better than anyone in this room where gas taxes is going. So we could ask Councilmember Nick to tell us where gas is going in the next 6 months or 8 months.
Well, I'm glad to hear that I'm doing my part, and I understand my business is still one of the top tax-producing businesses in Lake Forest, which always gives me joy to know. Yeah. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
So I just wanted to mention, for those in the audience looking on page 251 is our revised budget. I know that's kind of a long page. I think it's in the packet. So if you're able to see, in general, we start the year at 66 million. End the year budget-wise, very close. It's a balanced budget, especially the general fund and all the funds. And I think the fund that you were talking about the maintenance, is under the capital fund, city facilities fee maintenance, if I'm not mistaken.
That is right.
And that fund has about $1 million projected or budgeted by the end of the year. So we have a balanced budget, as Director of Finance Keith Neves has mentioned, and I'm happy to support this agenda item. And I also wanted to just briefly mention, as I flip through the pages, we have a $193,000 reduction in what would you call a general fund or operating appropriation. So overall, we've decreased the operating fund budget by about $200,000. So with that, can I move this item?
You may. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, gentlemen. Please cast your votes.
That motion carried unanimously.
That brings us to item number 13.
Agenda item 13, review of the financial investment policy submitted by City Treasurer, Director of Finance.
Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, this was placed on the agenda at the request of Mayor Pro Tem Hamilton and the Council's concurrence in that this is a time in which we actually wouldn't be doing this. We do it closer after the beginning of the new fiscal year. But at that request, we brought it forward to you. There's some minor recommendations relative to modifications to the policy itself. It has been reviewed by the City Attorney's Office for compliance with state law, and so I know Mr. Neves is available to answer any questions that you might have. Clearly, at this juncture, I think staff would be available to answer any questions you might have, but obviously, Mr. Mayor, we've complied with the request that Mayor Pro Tem Hamilton had to have an earlier conversation about this item.
So, bring it to Mayor Pro Tem.
So I wanted to thank staff for bringing this forward. I think there's a lot of things to like about this policy. First on my list is the DVP, the delivery versus payment account. I think for members of the public, that means that securities that come into our investment account are handled by like a third party. So if we make an investment with a specific dealer and something were to happen to them, say they sold too many of some type of securities, we have a third party that's holding those. It's called a DVP account. So I really appreciate that in the investment policy. I think it's more conservative, this investment policy, than what we're allowed to under state law, and I appreciate that too. And I think my third comment is that safety first, liquidity second, and yield third. That is also stated in the policy. Just a little bit about myself. I have quite a bit of experience in this arena. I'm currently the treasurer of a public agency, just like Director of Finance Keith Neves. So I've either had that function myself or acted as in a Treasury function at multiple public agencies. So I thought I'd start on page 269. Sorry, I have to flip back and forth between my notes and the agenda. I wanted to make sure that was right. So I have a comprehensive list of a few items, and I thought I'd just start off with my top three. It's noticeable that the Orange County Investment Pool is not listed as a permitted investment, and that's in items A through J, those 10 allowable investments. I'd like to have a discussion about adding them into the permitted investments. That's my first item that I'd like to discuss. The second item is item E. I'd like to propose that any of those negotiable certificates of deposit, along with there's actually another item I think that you have. D, the non-negotiable certificates of deposit, have FDIC insurance. I think it's important to not go over that $250,000 limit, and we have FDIC insurance for any CDs, whether they're negotiable or non-negotiable. And then thirdly, this is just my top three for right now. There are the California investment, or the California Government Code allows a little bit more flexibility as it relates to investments. Item number B, federal agencies, there's no statutory limit. They are backed by the full faith of the U.S. government. So I'd like to see that there's no limits there by issuer, no limits by that investment type. Theoretically, I think that's a very safe change to propose. Item number D, I'd also like to match again the California Government Code as it relates to investments. And what we can be allowed to do is to negotiable CDs and allow 30% of our portfolio to be invested in those negotiable CDs. Again, all of them being FDIC insured. And so that'd be like the top three things I want to initially discuss here.
You want to go back one by one?
Sure, we can start off with the Orange County Investment Pool.
In general, I mean, just as we get started, does the staff have any suggestions or any comments with respect to going into all this at this point? So.
Mr. Mayor, to the council, just I guess the issue related to the Orange County Investment Pool, it's historical. And that is the county of Orange went bankrupt. This city, as well as a number throughout Orange County, lost money in the Orange County Investment Pool. And so it's right at incorporation. The initial council was really struck by that we lost money in that investment pool. Consequently, they, as well as a number of other jurisdictions throughout Orange County, though we got some dollars back, and it was quite a process and quite a remarkable event in the history of Orange County for this county to go bankrupt. Not reliving all that history, the policy you have, the reason that it is more conservative than state law is because the original council, when they developed this, thought we never want to get close to that again. So we want to ensure that if the state of California has regulations and the county of Orange went bankrupt still using that flexibility, we want to be more conservative than that. And in as much as we were invested in that Orange County investment pool, it went bankrupt, we lost money. The original council said, we never want to do that again. So that's just the history behind it. Now, there's been a lot of years since the Orange County of Orange went bankrupt. They are finally paying off their debt as it relates to the bonds and issues that they sold in order to try and recover that. I believe Mayor Pro Tem Hamilton has different perspectives at this point because of the history, and it's been a long time since they went bankrupt. I'm just giving you the history as to why they did that. Things change over a very long period, so this was right at it, just at incorporation of the city, so it's a long time.
Very, very understandable. I mean, with respect to that first item there, it's the Orange County Investment Pool. I mean, do we know have cities kind of changed course? So initially they were probably very hesitant. Do we know what kind of who's involved in that pool at this point?
I'm not entirely sure. I would suspect between the two treasurers who are here this evening, they know that better than I do. I understand a few were back in, but I believe it's probably not that many in the county. The school districts are required by law to be in the Orange County Investment Pool, so sort of discount them. What special districts are involved, I'm not sure, but maybe Mr. Neves has.
I have not personally looked into the Orange County pool, so I don't know who's in it. I know of a few cities have gone back into it, not a whole lot of them. I think they have the same fear of it went bankrupt once, so they're staying away from it, and their councils are staying away from it. They've had a few treasurers, in my opinion. They've had a few treasurers. Citron, he did create a bankruptcy. Street had some troubles on his investments. So we've just kind of steered away from it, and I would have to do a lot of research and really look into it to see what they're investing in and understand what they're doing.
Okay. Would it be appropriate to make a motion to give us a report? What are the problems, what's the gains, and bring it back to us? Continue to explore it if you have.
It's an investment pool, like LAVE and CAMP. We're in CAMP and we're in LAVE, so it's just an overall investment pool that you really put short-term funds in that you drag in and out for payroll, for warrant runs like this. You're not usually keeping a whole lot of money in these investment pools. You're trying to push your money out into agencies and treasuries and so forth for longer-term investments. These investment pools are really just short-term and let you funnel money in and out on a quick basis before either funneling it through to investments or so forth and so on.
Yeah. So is the advantage to some of these over others, it's just basically they all have various levels of the safety aspect.
Yes, LAIF is probably
various
the
levels.
most restrictive and safest. They probably are a little more open than what LAIF is and what camp is.
And so it's kind of like balancing that. So they're all safe, but at a certain level, and then they're all liquid, but at
Yes.
varying levels. But maybe they're all in some top tier, and then
Yes.
they all provide some yield. And depending on the first two, maybe the yield is a little bit better in one than another. And
That is correct.
all right.
And they probably have a higher yield in both LAIF and camp.
All right.
By the way, I've taken they had an open house within the last year or two. I think they have it annually. And so I attended that, and she talked about the current treasurer, Sherry Friedrich, talked about all of the reforms that they have gone through. They have an advisory committee, and so it was something that I think was very good to see that she has a good pulse on things. And I think that Chris Street did have some issues with some of the liquidity concerns in 2008, 2009 when we had that little mini financial crisis, or I shouldn't say mini, but a financial crisis. But we do have a new treasurer for the county, and I feel very good about the safety and liquidity that she discussed during that open house. And maybe it would be appropriate for her to come to this venue to maybe give a brief presentation on the OCIP, Orange County Investment Pool, if the council so desired.
I think that's a good idea, though. I'd like to have the homework first. I'd like to see the report first, and then I think it'd be great to have her come.
Yeah, I definitely like the conservative approach. So, I like the direction that we've been going. I think my big concern is probably that at some point you get a little bit too conservative, where you're almost, as inflation rises and your interest isn't meeting with it, then actually your dollars the following year are less than they were the previous year, regardless of whether the number went up. The value of that dollar has gone down. And so, I'm not. I know that we need to be very conservative with the taxpayers' dollars. We need to be as frugal as we can. We need to be fiscally responsible. I preach that all the time. So it's that flip side that kind of, in being fiscally responsible, I want to make sure that that we're getting a good yield, but also really taking care of those other two aspects. The safety is what's most important, clearly, and then the liquidity when we've got money going in and out on CIP projects, and, things of that nature. So
That sounds good. So I'll make a motion that we ask Director Neves to come back and give us a report on the positive and negative aspects of pursuing this.
all right. And I'll second that motion. I'd also like to kind of hear the staff's thoughts on if there are a variety of issues that Mayor Pro Tem Hamilton would like to bring forth.
We might add, I'm thinking we might end up adding then the next motion, and so there'd be one.
Correct, yeah. So I'm just wondering staff's thoughts. I was thinking, last year we put together, we don't do this very often, so I want to get your thoughts, and I don't know if I'll put you on the spot here or not, but get staff's thoughts on, last year we had a subcommittee with the travel policy, so I don't know if that would make sense, maybe since the two of you have kind of piped up, and we've got someone who's got a treasurer background, maybe there'd be some value in that, but if not, we could just kind of work through the sausage tonight as well. Work through making the sausage. So.
Nobody likes to see sausage made, so.
Nobody does, but sometimes it has to. No. Well, it always has to, but sometimes people have to watch it.
Let's hold on, because you had a bunch of items. So there may be one motion at the end that simply covers all. Talk about this, talk about that, talk about the other, or we may end up.
So we'll keep it open for discussion.
Yeah,
but there's a second-tier OC investment pool, getting more research there. So.
Okay. Then let's go on with your other issues.
Would you like to vote on that and then continue?
Sure, we could and then amend it.
Okay, then can we continue on and just continue it all in one motion?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, council members, you can proceed with the vote now. You can continue on with the motion on the floor and amend that subsequently once discussion has taken place. It's your prerogative.
What's simplest for the city clerk?
voting on the motions as they're made and seconded.
All right, and with further discussion before I call the vote, I too and come from the approach that it's people's money. We're a fiscally sound city, and we've got many new projects that we all want to see come to fruition. We've got the new sports park, which is actually has a large maintenance fee. So my concern in venturing anywhere with where our history's been and brought us to is my concern for the safety of the people's money. So with that, I'll call the vote. And so thank you.
You know, one more thing is I completely agree. I think the safety and liquidity are the top two concerns that we have, and so.
Okay, gentlemen, vote. We're voting on our treasurer to look into financial director to bring that back to us on the.
You're bringing it back on the Orange County investment pool, so it'd be a report by the treasurer that the council could consider the pros and the cons. I think as it was articulated about whether you would choose to allow that as one of your investment vehicles.
Yes.
That motion carried unanimously.
Okay.
Thank you.
To our next subject.
Yeah, so do we want to go, I guess we can just add this to the list. My second point was the negotiable and non-negotiable CDs having FDIC insurance.
That's just some language we can put in here in the investment policy to say all negotiable CDs that are going to be purchased must be FDIC insured. I mean, it's not written clearly in here, but we can, clear up the language on there and write that in there.
So do we follow that in practice right now?
Yeah, we follow in practice. I
That
would not purchase anything over $250 from, if you purchase anything over $250 from any one bank, only $250 is going to be insured. So you're trying to purchase any CDs from a variety of banks out there.
So this wording would only clarify that, correct?
Yeah, the wording would just clarify.
You don't need a motion for that.
I don't think I need a motion for that. We can redline the policy.
Thank you.
What does the city clerk think? Should we have a motion?
I think that was sufficient direction for the director.
Great, fantastic.
Okay. Next.
Again, I'm going to item number 3, federal agencies not having any statutory limits. So if you look to, it would be
B.
Item B on page 269. So there's I can hit another point too. Purchases of callable securities is the third paragraph shall not exceed 30%. I don't think we need that strict. I mean, the callables are almost as we discussed, you and I, prior to this meeting. I think the market is really going to callables a lot, and I think if only 30% of the portfolio is that's just a limit that is just completely not necessary. But the issuer limits at the top of the page, next page, 270, 20% for each of those, and 30% for Federal Farm Credit Bank, a maximum of 60. I think we can just strike all of that. In addition, there's a few, they're called GSEs too, that are not listed. Let's see.
Tell us what a GSE is.
GSE is a government-sponsored agency, or entity, U.S. government-sponsored enterprise, rather, and they're also that, if you look at B, federal agencies. Some other ones that are not listed are the, let's see, help me out, is it, you have Fannie Mae, do you have Sallie Mae? No. Tennessee Valley Authority, SBA, Community Development Corporation, I think Farmer Mac. I don't think you have that one then. So anyway, there's a whole list, and if you look at this item that was printed out for us earlier, this is the CDAC, California Debt Investment Advisory Committee, publishes like a great guide. It's 100 some odd pages, and goes through any law changes, and so this is the current one. So you can see some of that. And on page 16 of that document, which we don't have here, it's actually top of page 17, it has the most commonly traded GSEs. So I just don't think we need to really call out which ones they are. They are defined, and I think those three, all those limits, we don't really need those at all.
So what's the staff position? It's all a little new to me. That's why I'm saying.
Yeah,
I'm talking about it right now, and I'm trying to
When you build an investment policy, you try not to put all your eggs in one basket. So what this investment policy was written up to do was, even though the federal agencies are all 100% secured by the federal government, whether it's Federal Farm Credit, Federal Home Loan Bank, Freddie Mae, Freddie Mac, they're all 100% secured by the U.S. government in the end. This policy was trying to get you to just not buy Federal Farm Credit for all your agencies, just trying to make you spread it around. So if anything ever happened to just one agency, you still had investments in other, federal agencies. That's what the real purpose of this policy was. But in the end, they're all 100% backed by the U.S. government.
Correct. So if we were to make a change, in practice, so we can change the policy to say, hey, 100% can be from federal agencies, right? But in practice, you're probably still going to end up with whatever is in our policy right now. We probably wouldn't even hit that maximum of 60%.
No, in practice, you're gonna get the brokers sending you emails each day. You're gonna look at the list or go on the platforms and look at the list, and you're gonna pick the best option that you can for the city on that day. If you're looking after agencies, a 3-year agency out there with a callable, you're trying to find the best yield for the city on that particular day, and they change day by day.
Do you feel like the current policy gives you enough flexibility, or is there a little bit more flexibility, like this callable issue here with respect to...
as you see, there was 3 changes that in the staff report that I asked for on this policy, and one of them was to take it to 5 years out to meet state law. That'll help you with your yield curve a little bit more. And then on the callables, I asked for to go 15 to 30%. And then we also have a 2.5, a weighted average. We had a weighted average of 2 years. You could go no longer than 4 years out, but the weighted average had to be no more than 2 years. I asked that to be moved up since we were moving out to 5 years to 2.5 years. So those three things I thought would help open up the policy a little bit more.
And I guess my question is just, does this give you enough flexibility, or were you trying to, like, if we went from 15% callable to, say, 75%, that you thought, maybe that'd be too hard to explain to everybody, we're being conservative.
No, as Mayor Pro Tem said,
from 15 to 30?
The callable market has grown. Your non-callable market is really shrinking. Every year it's getting smaller and smaller, because the callable market it can be called, it depends on what kind of callable you're buying, a European, a Bermuda. These are all terminologies in the industry. And you might not understand those, but a European is a one-time call. You buy a 3-year bond, and it could be a one-time call 1 year later or 2 years later, and that's all they can call it. Or a Bermuda it could be called continuously after a year. Every day you could get a letter saying, hey, in 30 days this is going to be called. So what that does is just help you. It helps you broaden it a little bit more.
Okay, so
by opening it up, it's not, it's not going to hinder me. It's not going to help me. I would probably purchase the same way.
Okay, that's really what I'm trying to get at, because I want to make sure that you feel that, that you've got the flexibility to do it. Because again, as we've said many, many times, safety and liquidity are most important, but I'm also focused on that yield, and I'm just reiterating that, I want the value of my dollar to be as close next year to what it is today.
Yes.
I know we're not going to get there completely, but, it's definitely my goal. So.
At some point.
I was just going to say, if you look at A on 269, U.S. Treasuries, there is no limit for that. So it just seems arbitrary to have limits on federal agencies, but not on the U.S. Treasuries, since both are allowed in the California Government Code to be up to 100% of the portfolio. So that's just kind of where I'm going.
Yeah, the theory behind the U.S. Treasuries is they're supposedly the safest investment. You know, that was always said out there in books and literature that the U.S. Treasury is the safest investment you could do anywhere in the world. They're backed by the U.S. government. But, you know, as Mayor Pro Tem said, agencies are also 100% backed by the U.S. government.
So as long as the country doesn't declare
As long as the...
then we're good. Okay.
You never know what direction we're going.
Yeah, well, you know, if they're backed by the U.S. government, as long as it has money. I think we're in a lot of trouble if you start seeing agencies and treasuries not being paid. So
But
we have more problems than investing.
So the policy that's here and what we're asking to move around, do you ever get to that limit where you say, gosh, I wish I could have? I mean, on any of these, were the limits too low for you? Or
going out 5 years, because you can see some, you know, if you wanted to put away $5 million on a longer term, make a little more yield and extend that yield curve a little bit more. You know, that's why I, you know, pushed that out 5 years. That kind of hindered us a little bit. The 2-year weighted average gets tough when it was down to 4-year, but I think me moving it up to 2.5 would be fine. But if you know, opening it up, I'm still going to try to invest the same way. What we did do in the last year is kind of hold on to our money, put it in late, because we didn't know if we had to use it for the sports park. If you look from the beginning of the year, January, February, and look at the investments in the Treasury report that's on the agenda item tonight, you'll see our yield starting to go up, because I have 2 more years until we're going to supposedly start the Civic Center. So I didn't want to go out too far, because if we don't want to issue debt for the Civic Center, then we need liquidity for the Civic Center, and we wouldn't want to invest these things too far out. So that's kind of what the investment strategy was in the last year and a half for the sports park. Now that we have a little time frame to go, we can invest a little further out. And, you know, like I said, if you look at the Treasury report tonight, we're up from 2.6 to 3.2. And the next month's Treasury, which would be March's, will go up even more, and then it'll keep going up and up and up.
So on that,
Sorry. So based on those comments, I mean, you still feel like it's important to make the changes when, you know, based on what our treasurer is saying, or, yeah.
You know, I just, I mean, personally, I think treasuries, right now, the U.S. treasuries are such at a low rate that, you know, I don't have any treasuries. I don't think you have any.
No, I don't. Treasuries are, they are very flexible in the market. One day you'll see it at one rate, the next day you'll see it at another rate. It's a tough instrument to keep track of and buy, because it's almost an instrument that you need to keep buying and selling. And really, the policy that I follow here is really we buy and hold, buy a lot of new issues. They're not secondary issues. Hold them until maturity, and then go out, build a ladder up for 2 or 3 years. Try to fill in your ladder, so every month $1 million or $2 million is coming up in investments, and you're investing $1 million or $2 million back out in investments. That's what we're trying to do since the beginning of the year with everything, is try to build that ladder again and try to have investments go out and then investments come in, and build a ladder so you're far enough out that you're extending that yield curve and earning, you know, a decent yield for the city of Lake Forest.
So to continue, you know, that's pretty much like, you know, the safest, but you know, the rates are so horrible that for U.S. treasuries, you're not really going to invest in those. So really what you have left right now that are of any value are federal agencies and negotiable CDs or regular CDs, although I don't think really you don't have any non-negotiable CDs.
Non-negotiable CDs.
Yeah, so the only 2 left really are going to be those negotiable CDs and federal agencies. And so, you know, if you have 20% as staff has in the current policy and is proposed for those negotiable CDs, then that leaves you with 80% to put somewhere else. And, you know, federal agencies are extremely safe. So I don't think anyone's disputing the safety, the first item, or liquidity, because I'm sure you're going to have in either some in LAIF or OCIP if that passes, or the mutual fund. So I don't want to limit in just otherwise normally safe investments, the ability for us to really attack that why, the yield. So that's really why I'm talking about this, is that I think we all agree they're safe. The city's going to maintain the liquidity, and so really the only thing left is the yield, and I just don't want to hamper the city's ability to attack the yield and increase the yield in any way.
So basically what you're asking for is with the federal agencies to go to a no limit, just like we have with the Treasury bills notes, right?
Correct.
And so then so the policy's set, but in practice, you'll probably rarely ever get there, but if you ever needed to for some weird reason, the opportunity would be there.
Right, and that's
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, that's...
Treasuries might, tomorrow become the investment of choice.
Yeah.
And if Director of Finance Neves wants to invest in U.S. Treasuries, he has 100%. He has the ability to put 100% into them. And so that with that flexibility in mind is why, the market can turn on a dime. And again, safety is important. The number one, liquidity is number two, and then I don't want to limit him on yield in any way.
Why do you think somewhere along the line our colleagues years ago sat at a meeting like this and put those limits in? Why do you think they did that? Does anybody? Because so now if we're going to reverse it, I'd kind of like to get a feeling for why that was done in the first place.
Mr. Members of the Council, I wasn't here either when the first Council created this policy. I can only speak to what I understand based on conversations. It really was their experience in the bankruptcy. So they worked with a firm in order to look at what I think has been articulated. How do we make us absolutely more safe than maybe you might feel is appropriate today? So, not knowing all of those factors, my guess is just based on their experience. And had that bankruptcy never occurred, you wouldn't probably see a policy like you have today. And it hasn't been changed fundamentally in large ways since. There's been minor modifications that have been made over the years. When the Treasurer has felt a little too hampered, there's been recommendations from the Treasurer to say, let's change this. And so we have modified it. But some of that, I believe, was a function of their experience, and people are sometimes the product of their experiences in life, and that's what they had. It doesn't mean that, for example, the OCIP is a bad investment at this juncture. Just that's what informed their behavior. If we're looking at fundamentally ensuring that it's safe and it's liquid and it is the yield, you don't hamper it, I believe in practice what I'm hearing is probably consistent with ultimately following those three tenets. They're not co-equal, they're actually tiered. And so I not only does Mr. Neves invest, he comes in and talks to me, and obviously you see his reports. And so if you were concerned, you probably would have already articulated that to him. But I think it provides the flexibility that might, I think, in this market help a little bit in terms of the yield. But we're not chasing yield; we're watching for the safety of the investment.
And would we need a motion for that too, or is that just something he can?
I was going to suggest, Mr. Mayor, that there were a couple of things that the Mayor Pro Tem was talking about. One additional last motion, there were three things that Mr. Neves is recommending, and we would want you actually to take an action on those three, but I believe one of them is being modified by the suggestion of Mayor Pro Tem, which is not put it at 30%, but take that limit off. So when you come back, I think it would be best to try to collect all those up in one motion and make that, and I think we'd be done.
And just one additional thing is that if you look at the California Government Code, what everyone has on page 12, there is an investment that is not listed that I agree should not be in our investment policy, and that's the sixth one up from the bottom on page 12, mortgage pass-through securities. So by state law, we would be able to invest in that up to 5 years, 20% of the portfolio with a minimum of a single A rating. And I don't want that to be a permitted investment. So that already is conservative, conservatively excluded from the investment policy. I actually have I think about 9 more items, so it might be best if we, I think your advice on maybe forming an ad hoc committee might be a good idea.
You want to make that motion?
How does that sound? And would you rather just try to go through it now, or?
We could form an ad hoc committee and sit in a room and go through it, or we could sit here tonight and keep going through it.
Well, Mr. Mayor, the council, whatever the council does ultimately, even if you create a subcommittee, needs to come back to the city council, and the policy would have to be voted upon by the body. You're not delegating your responsibility to 2 people to make those decisions.
Absolutely.
So I think what you're asking is, Mayor Pro Tem Hamilton already has a list of ideas. He's already looked at that. So fundamentally what I sense is you want another member of the council to sit down with him and say, what is it you want, and explain it, and maybe bring it back in some fashion with staff. You could do that with a subcommittee. You certainly could have Mayor Pro Tem Hamilton provide his list to Mr. Neves. We could package it and report and bring it back to you without having another council member necessarily go through that. It's really the path that you'd want to take. If we don't want to go through them all tonight, I think what we want to do is get them on paper and then get them back in front of you.
That sounds like it accomplishes what we're trying.
Hamilton and Neves and one other council person together, rather than making it sequential. We'll let them hash it all out.
If I may, I was going to move so that we put this subcommittee in place, just like we did last year, as Mr. Robinson indicated, and have you, Andrew, lead, and you, Dr. Gardner, assist him.
Would you be better?
In fact, I'd rather have an accountant and a non-accountant. That's why I'm suggesting you. Because if you put Andrew and me, we'll look at things the same way. Perhaps you would be a better supplement to him than I would be. You would have perspectives that I don't have as an accountant. Some people call us bean counters. I think one bean counter is enough in that equation. Not to mention he's younger and more good-looking than I am, which means probably sharper also. So I move to have this subcommittee by the 2 of you to communicate directly with Keith and Mr. Dunnigan. Then report back to us, and we'll take it from there. I think this way, it'll be time-wise, it'll be a lot quicker, and we don't have to spend time here with all the staff members, and So that's my motion. Thank you for listening.
Councilman Gardner, do you think you'd provide value in that, or do you think that his submittal of the 9 more items would?
No, initially I thought Councilman Nick was better for it because they have the expertise, but I think he's right. It's better to have somebody there who's not a bean counter, who's going to look at it from a different perspective, and then it's got to convince the average person, or not another bean counter, that this is the right thing. So I think that's better. I have the time. If either of you 2, want to do it, I'm happy for you to do it, but I probably have more time than the rest of you.
Okay. I mean, do we envision this being more than 1 meeting? I don't think so. Okay. All right. Well, then I'll second the motion.
Yeah, and I'll agree. And in the possibility of our city manager sitting into, if you so feel.
Certainly, Mr. Mayor. I think what I see is 4 people getting together, talking with Mayor Pro Tem Hamilton as to what his thoughts were, and then bringing a report back to the council, and let you making a decision ultimately about how you might modify the policy further. What you already have by action, I think, of the council is for Mr. Neves to do a report relative to the Orange County investment pool. So that already stands by itself. We'll do that. This would create a policy or a committee to look at the rest and make a recommendation back to you.
Thank you. Including your ideas of what your flexibility, you bring that up in committee. Okay. Let's vote, gentlemen.
I want to thank everybody for addressing that.
Thank you for bringing it up.
That motion carried unanimously.
That brings us to
Well,
item.
actually, we should probably also vote on recommended actions. Would that make sense, or should we just wait until, I mean, the ones that you've suggested? So far, just-
Mr. Mayor, I would bring
one
those,
of them, but-
yeah, I think we bring those back as part of the report that comes
All right,
back.
okay.
Because one of them was going to be changed by
Exactly, yeah.
that
Yeah.
discussion.
And I think I include that in the motion that we... Okay. All right. Item number 14.
Agenda item 14, discussion regarding regional meetings with the cities of Mission Viejo and Irvine, submitted by city manager.
Mr. Members of the City Council, this was placed on the agenda at the request of Councilmember Gardner, with consensus from the council. We've provided council a brief report relative to those organizations that provide similar kinds of ideas. Staff has nothing further to submit. We'd be glad to respond to any questions that you might have.
Bring it back to you, Councilman Gardner.
Thank you very much to my colleagues for, advancing this, and a very good report. And it looks like what I wanted to do may be a good idea, but just doesn't look like it's possible to do given the kinds of context. So, unless somebody else has figured out some other way to do that, I think we just let it die, and thank you very much for the work.
No, I'd like to comment on that. Councilman Gardner, it's good for us to be regionally focused with our surrounding cities, with the impact we have in traffic and new developments farther south. But I think that we have the ability to do that with the ACCOC and so Legacy. So it wasn't a fruitless cause, because the fact is that we should be talking with our surrounding cities, and so I want to thank you for that. And with that, we'll file. Okay, moving right along. Item number 15.
Agenda item 15, legislative and regulatory matters, submitted by city manager.
Mr. Mayor and City Council, we've provided you a report on a bill that is out in the legislature at this juncture. It relates to redevelopment. The staff's able to respond to any questions that you might have about this, but we have nothing further.
Council?
No, I don't have any questions. I mean, I think that we should just move the staff recommendation here.
Second.
No further discussion. Gentlemen, please vote.
That item carried unanimously.
And that brings us to manager's report.
I have nothing further, Mr. Mayor.
Nothing further. Okay, council. Councilman Gardner.
First of all, the beads, and those of you who are lucky enough to get a donut, are the gift of the Chamber of Commerce, who met earlier today, and want to thank them. And Marge is in the back from the council. So thank you very much. It's great that we have our own Chamber of Commerce here in the city. And those of you in business should join and support them, and look forward to seeing my other councilmen at their meetings. We won't be meeting again, I guess, till April 7th. We kind of have 2 weeks off. And so I wanted to mention a couple of things coming up in that time. Number one, this Saturday, the Kiwanis is having a garage sale in Foothill Ranch. And you can find out more about that on their website. Next week here in the city, we're having, the economic development folks are having Avoiding Litigation in the Workplace. That's Dave Belmer and Jessica Gonzalez. They do a terrific job, and their workshops are always very informative and free, right? Free. Terrific. Maybe we need user fees for our budget. Who knows? But right now they're free. Get them
more
all,
taxes.
Get them while they last. On March the 28th, that's a week from next Saturday, the Seroptimists of Lake Forest are having their Bras for a Cause meeting at the Murray Center, and that's always a great event. And there's silent auctions. You go there with $100, you come back with $1,000 worth of goodies. So I recommend that heartily. And then on April 7th, April 3rd, so the Friday before our next meeting,
the Majeska Playhouse is going to be opening up their first performance of the 39 Steps. That's our own Lake Forest 49-person theater, and Mayor Voights and Councilman Robinson were there at the open house the other day. It's remarkable what they've done, and I'm really looking forward to that. I hope you'll all try to come out to that on April 3rd, and with that, that's all I have.
Brings us to Councilman Adam Nick.
I'll try to be very quick on this. Not to rehash the past, but quickly, thank you for those who bore with me for over an hour last time. I totally got carried away. I had a lot to say, and I did say it. I wish I could have said it in a much smaller window of time. That said, again, I don't want to relive it, but my belief system does not. My belief system does not allow me to criticize publicly or disparage someone with whom I used to call myself friends. I resent it when I hear an ex-wife disparage the ex-husband or vice versa. The fact of the matter is, at some point, there was a friendship that should be respected. It should be honored for as long as we breathe. Ask my ex-wife; she would still tell you I'm the most decent guy on the face of the planet. She may be wrong on that, that I'm the most decent guy, but that's what she would tell you. And I've been divorced for over 20 years. The fact is, she helped me in life, and I am, to a great extent, who I am because of her. The fact that we've been divorced for over 20 years does not change the fact that she was the love of my life for a very good 7 years of my life. That said, I don't have the heart to criticize or disparage Mr. Robinson publicly or even privately. I just want to say something as a matter of clarification. Mr. Robinson indicated last time that at some point in the last few months he heard me using a racial slur in the context of former Councilwoman McCullough. Putting aside that I'm a minority myself, putting that aside, which makes me perhaps super sensitive to being to other minorities. But putting that aside, I did not remember such an event. He indicated that, and I would not be talking about it publicly had he not. I wish he had come to me privately, but he did not. So this is the same venue in which I'm responding to the comment. He said that that I was conversing with Mr. Bob Holtzclaw, and that I was in the vicinity of Mr. Gardner. So I did not remember such an event because I know myself. Mr. Gardner said at the very time that he did not remember such an event. He and I talked further, and I said, "You sure?" He said, "Yeah, I just don't remember it." The following day, I contacted Mr. Holtzclaw, who was kind enough to come here a few minutes ago after he put in a very, very long day collecting ballots and votes at Serrano Middle School on Geronimo. After he put in a good long day, he did come here a few minutes ago, and he's sitting in the back row to perhaps verify, if need be, by whomever, what I'm about to say. I called Mr. Holtzclaw the following day, left a message. We talked shortly thereafter, and he did not remember that I ever had a talk with him and used that kind of a language towards Mrs. McCall or anybody for that matter. I again today went down to turning my ballot to him, and I said, "You're sure, Bob, I didn't say something like that?" He said, "Yeah, I'm confident, I'm certain." I did not even ask him to come here, but he was kind enough to come here, perhaps to give me the courage I needed to say what I'm saying. And it's not the courage because I am not courageous. It's the courage because it takes a lot for me to say something that goes against someone who used to be a friend to me. It is some of the hardest thing for me to go against someone I cared for before. That said, I don't believe I made that racial slur. I'm confident Mr. Robertson thinks he heard it. He might have heard something out of context. He might have misheard it. But I did not make it. I'm confident of that. I'm not calling him a liar. Again, this is just one of many, many misunderstandings in life. After you put in 14 to 16 hours at the office and you drive all the way here from LA to attend a 2-3 hour council meeting, by then you will have had, 17, 18 hours on your feet. He may have thought he had that, but that said, the light is on. I don't want to speak for another hour. I just wish he had come to me privately. One last thing I want to very, very quickly say. Again, it goes against my belief system, but if I ever heard someone talk to someone else during a conversation to which I was not part of, I would never, under any circumstance, unless it's a matter of life or death, I would not. I like to think I am man enough, I am decent enough, and I'm not saying it's not, but again, put it in the context of my belief system. I would never repeat something that I heard during a conversation to which I was not privy, unless it was going to result in somebody's death or something catastrophic. Otherwise, I consider it none of my business. Thank you.
That brings us to Councilman Dwight Robinson.
Have a good evening.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Briefly, I went to that ACCOC Water Committee. I think that was last Thursday. And they talked about the Huntington Beach desalinization plant proposed by Poseidon. I think that was a very good and informative meeting. I also attended the South Orange County watershed that Mr. Wheeler mentioned, and I think that's going to be a good thing for some of our water-related projects and issues that affect Lake Forest. With that, happy St. Patrick's Day, and glad to see that there's at least 8 people left in the crowd.
I'd like to divulge that 2 weeks ago I went to the OCBC ACCO lobbying event up in Sacramento, where we got to meet Lieutenant Governor Gavin Newsom and many of the legislators up in Sacramento, talk concerning issues here that relate to us in Orange County. Here in Orange County, we're very, very well represented by Republican leadership, but the fact is that, the state is heavily Democratic. So to hear some of their outlook on what the state is and where we're going was very eye-opening to us as legislators from Orange County. So that was a great event. So with that, I want to wish you guys all welcome our new community services director. I know that you're going to do great things for us and utilize all that time on those fields for us. And so congratulations on landing here in Lake Forest, and thank you, staff. Thank you all for out there. Happy St. Patty's Day.